glory of God is great. He is real, and He can be found, not after death, not in some distant future when you have finally become worthy enough, but in this life, in this body, in this very breath you are taking right now. In every human heart there are prayers. Prayers for money, prayers for health, prayers for recognition, for love, for security, for all manner of things the world promises and rarely delivers. People spend entire lives on their knees for these things, and many of them receive what they asked for, and still find themselves kneeling, still unsatisfied, still reaching. But there is one prayer that belongs above all others. One prayer that should be first in every heart, even if it has never once been spoken out loud. The prayer for God's presence, not His gifts, not His favors, not the blessings He can arrange in the outer world. His presence itself, His company, the direct knowing of Him, silently and surely as you walk the long road of this life. If you are paying any attention at all, you come to realize something that the world does everything in its power to prevent you from realizing. God is the only object, the only goal that will ever truly satisfy you. Not because the world is worthless, but because you were made of Him, and what is made of God can only be satisfied by returning to God. In Him lies the answer to every real desire of the human heart. Not the surface desires, the real ones. The ones underneath all the wanting. I will tell you something that may seem strange to hear. I do not pray. Not in the way most people understand prayer. When people hear this, they are sometimes shocked. How can a man of God not pray? But consider this carefully. When the object of your prayer is with you all the time, when His presence is as constant and as real to you as the air in your lungs, what is there left to pray for? The prayer has already been answered. The wish has already been fulfilled. There is no longer any distance between the one who is asking and the one being asked. In the fulfillment of that one supreme wish, the wish for God Himself, lies joy that does not end. Not joy that arrives and stays for a while and then quietly leaves through a back door. Joy that is simply the nature of being in His presence. The way warmth is the nature of being near a fire. This is what I want you to understand tonight, not as philosophy, as something you can actually verify in your own experience. If you are willing to look honestly, material desires, the endless parade of wanting that defines most human lives, do not come from nowhere. They come from a specific misunderstanding about the purpose of this life. This earth is not our home. We've been told this in every scripture, in every genuine spiritual tradition, across every culture that has ever existed. We are children of God, made in His image, And it is His will, His deep, loving, patient will, that we return to our source. That the journey that began in Him ends in Him. What man does not realize, what the noise and distraction of the world works very hard to prevent him from realizing, is that until he goes back to that source, back to God, he will struggle to fulfill endless desires, not one after another, in a sequence that eventually reaches completion. No, endless, without resolution. Because the very nature of desire born from forgetting God is that it cannot be satisfied by anything other than God. Reflect on that carefully. It is not a sin to have desires. Man cannot help having them. But most human longings, the ones pointed toward the world, toward what fades, toward what can be given and taken back, actively obstruct the fulfillment of the one supreme desire, the desire to return home to God. And because they obstruct it, they are, in the deepest sense, enemies of your happiness. Not because happiness is forbidden, because they are pointing you away from the only place happiness actually lives. To him who has God, instant fulfillment of all desires comes automatically. Not slowly, not partially, automatically. Because in God, everything you were actually looking for in every lesser desire is already present. Complete, unconditioned, unable to be taken away. There are two kinds of desires. The first kind helps you find God. The second kind obstructs the finding. This is not a complicated distinction, though the mind will often try to make it seem complicated when it doesn't want to let go of something. Here is how to tell them apart. When someone strikes you, the immediate impulse is to strike back. That impulse is not evil in itself. It is simply the ego protecting itself, as the ego is designed to do. But if you overcome that impulse by choosing love instead, by using the superior power of what you actually are over the temporary reaction of what you mistakenly think you are, you have applied exactly the kind of action that moves you toward God. All desires can be offered to God. Every single one. And when you learn to do this, when you genuinely give a desire to Him instead of chasing it yourself through worldly means, He does something remarkable. He ensures that your good desires are fulfilled and the harmful ones are quietly dissolved, not suppressed, dissolved, as if they never had the hold on you they seem to have. There is no protection greater than your own conscience. The divine quality of a good desire carries within it its own armor. And here is the most extraordinary thing. If you look directly at your own soul, the all-perfect reflection of God within you, always present, always whole, never once diminished by anything you have done or failed to do. You would find all your desires satisfied in that single looking. In that divine consciousness, no other gain is greater. If the entire world were handed to you, you would be unmoved. Praise could not lift you higher. Blame could not bring you lower. You would feel only what I can only call the great joy of God within. Now I want to say something about the way most people pray. And I want to say it directly, because I think it causes more suffering than people realize. Cut out begging from your prayer. Change the old attitude of supplication, the posture of a beggar approaching a king who might or might not be in a generous mood today. God does not punish this approach. He does not turn away from the one who prays as a stranger. But your results will always be limited by that consciousness. You will always be reaching across a distance that prayer from that position can never quite close. You are not a beggar. You are not a stranger. You are God's child. Pray from that understanding. Come to Him the way a child comes to a father, not with formal petitions and careful language designed to impress, but with the directness and intimacy of one who belongs in that presence and knows it. God does not want you to surrender your willpower, which is your divine birthright as His child. He wants you to exercise it rightly in His direction as His co-worker in your own evolution. Distinguish between good desires and harmful ones. This discrimination is not optional. It is the entire work. Here is what is worth understanding about desire. Whatever you hold on to with real persistence, whether good or bad, has a tendency to be fulfilled. This is not a comfortable truth. If you cling to evil desires, truly cling to them, keep returning to them, refuse to examine them honestly, they will eventually be granted. And then you will find out firsthand what harm and unhappiness they cause. The body itself teaches this. A person with weak digestion, who eats fried foods against their own better judgment, knows the delight of the moment and knows the suffering that follows. The after effect is the teacher. Life arranges these lessons with great patience and great precision. The wiser course is to separate your desires clearly. Honest self-examination, not self-criticism. And then to avoid the fulfillment of the harmful ones, not by force of will alone, but by replacing them with something better. Discrimination is the fire that burns up desire, not suppression. Discrimination, the clear seeing of what something actually is. Here is the teaching that the whole spiritual tradition agrees on, and that almost everyone finds a way to avoid. Unfulfilled desires do not die when you die. The body dissolves. The name disappears. The circumstances of this particular life are folded away, but the desires that were never resolved, the forces, good and evil, or the complicated mixture of both that most human desires actually are, those do not dissolve with the body. As mental impressions, as living patterns of energy, they follow the soul wherever it goes. And when you are reborn, and the ancient understanding affirmed across traditions is that you are, these impressions arrive with you, not as memories you can identify, as tendencies, as unexplained pulls, as the character traits that appear even in very young children that their present circumstances cannot fully account for. A person who dies with unresolved anger is reborn with a tendency toward anger. A person who dies with unresolved fear comes back with fear already installed, before the world has given them any specific reason to be afraid. God did not create these tendencies. The soul itself created them, through choices made and desires held and patterns reinforced, in this life and in lives before it. This is why the work of this life is not optional, not something to get to eventually when other things settle down. The tendencies you do not overcome now travel with you into the next chapter of your soul's journey, and they will have to be faced there. Better to face them here, in the circumstances you are already in, with the awareness you are already developing. There are two ways to be finished with the desire: through the satisfaction of it, which often simply produces a new desire to replace the old one, or through wisdom, through the clear realization that only God can give permanent, unalloyed happiness. The first way is the path most people spend their lives on. The second is the shortcut that feels longer but actually isn't. And what about your enemies? Suppose someone has wronged you. Suppose they have died, and the wrong is in the past, and by every rational measure, the situation is finished. And yet, without choosing it, you find the bitterness still present, the old anger still available when the memory surfaces. That bitterness is not hurting them. It is hurting you. It produces effects in your own body, in your own mind, in your own experience. Effects that have nothing to do with justice or fairness. Hatred poisons the one who carries it. This is simply how it works, regardless of whether the hatred is deserved. The practice Yogananda offered was not the popular one. He did not say, "Try to understand why your enemy acted as they did," or "Try to forgive them for your own sake," or "Work through the feelings until they resolve." He said, "Try to behold God in your enemy, not their behavior, not their choices, the divine presence within them, the same presence that is within you, that exists in every living being regardless of what that being has done with the life they were given. This is a practice, not a feeling. You do not have to feel it at first. You do not have to be convinced. You practice the seeing, and the practice itself gradually changes what becomes visible. By refusing to heap hatred upon hatred, by choosing consciously a different direction, you release yourself from the chains of vengeful desire that, if left in place, will follow you forward into whatever comes next. Now I want to say something about how most people actually live, and I want to say it without cruelty, but also without the softening that makes truth easier to hear, but impossible to act on. Most people are floating along on the current of custom and fashion. They are living the life the world laid out for them. The acceptable goals, the expected milestones, the approved forms of happiness, and they have never once stopped to examine whether any of it is actually theirs. They have lived the life of the world, and where has it gotten them? It is wise now and then, more than now and then, regularly as a practice, to remove yourself from the ordinary current, to calm the mind and sit quietly and ask yourself what kind of person you actually are, and what kind of person you actually want to be. Not the person others have decided you are, not the person your history has shaped you toward being, the person your soul was designed to become. Your conscience will tell you the truth about this if you listen. Not the social conscience that reflects the opinions of your environment. The deeper discriminative voice of the soul itself. The voice that is always present, usually quieter than everything else in the room, but entirely precise in what it says. Whatever your conscience says, that is what you are. Think of the power of the conscience of Jesus. His accusers spat on him. They crucified him. They did everything the most threatened and frightened parts of human nature can do to a person who refuses to be diminished. And in the midst of that, he said, "Father, forgive them," not because he was performing virtue, because his contact with God was not conditional on what was happening around him. The consciousness of God's presence was not something that could be removed by what other people did to his body. That kind of discrimination, that kind of inner stability, is the only power that actually illuminates a path through this life. Not intelligence, not strategy, not the ability to outmaneuver circumstances. The clarity of a conscience that has been kept clean enough to hear itself. There are many things that feed desire. The world is very good at this. You see something new and you want it. A new design, a new model, a new version of something you already have. Immediately, the mind begins to generate reasons why this particular thing is necessary. And today's wanting is replaced by tomorrow's different wanting, in a sequence that never quite resolves. because each new desire, once satisfied, simply creates space for the next one. I used to sit for hours contemplating this. Where do these desires come from? I sorted through mine carefully, kept only the ones worth keeping, and when I had genuine contact with God, not a glimpse, not a feeling, but real contact, I found something I had not expected. All those good desires were immediately fulfilled. All of them. At once. Not because each individual thing I had wanted appeared, but because the thing I was actually looking for in all of them was already present, and I could finally see it. Your mind descends from Almighty God. It is not built to be satisfied by what the world offers. It will never be satisfied by what the world offers. You have lost your soul's richest treasure, which is the only thing that can satisfy all desires. And that treasure is God. Every seeking you do in the direction of the world is, at its root, a misdirected seeking for Him. There are good and necessary desires. Pursue them. The scripture does not ask you to become indifferent to your legitimate life. But while pursuing your smaller desires, do not lose sight of the supreme desire. Do not let the lesser urgency crowd out the greater one. This was a lesson I had to learn personally. As a young disciple under my guru, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, I kept telling myself I would meditate longer tomorrow. A whole year passed that way. A full year of tomorrows, each one promising what the actual day never delivered. Then I resolved to meditate first thing in the morning before anything else. But even then, the moment I began to move about, the daily duties and small urgencies of life would pull me into their current, and the meditation would be postponed again. Finally, I made the only resolution that actually worked. God first, meditation first, then everything else. The lesser duties do not disappear when you do this. They get done, but they are done from a different ground, from a consciousness that has already touched what is real, rather than a consciousness still searching for it in the activities of the day. Why should God open the doors of eternity to you when you consistently place other duties before Him? This is not a threat. It is simply the description of how things work. If you are not regularly, genuinely moving toward your highest possibility, what exactly are you offering to your life or to God? Seek Him first. This is the one rearrangement of priorities that changes everything else. I want to say something about life itself now, about what it actually is. Once you see it clearly, life is not what it seems to be. Do not trust it in the way the world asks you to trust it. Do not anchor your happiness in it. It is full of tragedy and comedy. It is a kaleidoscope of infinite variety, and it is fundamentally impermanent. The things you depend on will change. The people you love will leave. Through circumstances, through growth, through death. When I returned to India in 1935, I was looking forward to visiting the places I had loved as a child. The familiar scenes, the trees, the old family home in Ichapur, where I used to play and watch the birds. I arrived and found everything changed. One remembered tree was left. The stage was set differently. What I had held in memory as secure and permanent had quietly become something else entirely. The way everything in this world quietly becomes something else entirely if you wait long enough. I would have given anything in that moment to see it as it had been, and yet God granted me a vision of it later. The pond, the house, the mango I had eaten as a boy. All of it materialized in an experience that no outer circumstance had taken away, because it existed in a dimension that outer circumstances cannot reach. This is not meant to make you afraid of life. It is meant to clarify something important. What is real cannot be taken. What can be taken was never the thing you were actually looking for. Life is, in the deepest sense, God's laboratory. He is testing souls, testing whether they will choose good desires over evil ones, whether they will finally make Him their supreme desire, whether they will work their way back to the home they never actually left, only forgot. This is not pessimism. This is the most optimistic possible understanding of what is happening to you. Because if this world is the laboratory, then everything that seems to go wrong, every loss, every disappointment, every plan that doesn't arrive at its expected destination, is part of the experiment, not its failure. Take God seriously. Take life lightly. This is what my master taught me in those early days in his hermitage when I went about with a solemn face, treating every ordinary moment with the gravity of a funeral. He looked at me one day and said, "What is this? Are you attending a funeral ceremony? Don't you know that finding God is the funeral of all sorrows? Why so glum? Don't take this life too seriously." Krishna taught the same thing in different language. Remain even-minded through happiness and sorrow, profit and loss, triumph and failure. Meet the battle of life from that evenness. In this way, you will not accumulate the weight of sin, the weight of actions taken from reaction, from fear, from the disturbance that comes when you are too attached to how things turn out. Christ demonstrated this in the most extreme possible circumstances. What was done to his body did not take his divine consciousness. God's love was not conditional on his comfort or his safety or the approval of the people around him. That protection, the protection of God's presence regardless of outer conditions, is the greatest fortress available to a human being. Throughout every trial and suffering, remember the good things God has given you. Your soul is a divine temple. The darkness of limitation and ignorance can be driven out of that temple, not by force, but by the steady increase of the light within it. Be afraid of nothing. Hate none. Give love to all. Feel the love of God as the ground you are standing on rather than something you are reaching for. See his presence in everyone you encounter, not as a pious exercise, but as the most accurate perception available to you. Have but one desire, His constant presence in the temple of your consciousness. Those who have other desires, who have made something smaller than God their primary goal, will not know true satisfaction. This is not a punishment. It is simply the description of how the heart is built and what it is built for. Desires are formed according to environment. This is something worth understanding because it means something practical and actionable. You are constantly being shaped by what you are near. The desires you have are not entirely your own. They have been fed, cultivated, reinforced by the circumstances, the company, the constant stream of images and messages you have moved through. Attend a small fair and you want what a small fair offers. Go to a world fair and you want more. Be exposed to the things of God, to genuine spiritual company, to real meditation, to even a few moments of actual contact with the divine presence. And the comparison between that and what the world ordinarily offers is so stark that lesser desires begin to lose their grip entirely. This is the value of spiritual company, not a social experience, a recalibration, a reminder given through proximity and shared orientation of what you actually are and what you are actually here for. Live with people whose minds are constantly pulled into the world, and you will find your mind going there too, without choosing it. Live with one who has genuine divine consciousness, or spend even a little time in that direction through sincere meditation, and something of that elevation comes with you afterward. Even a few moments of deep meditation is like a raft, he said, to carry you across the ocean of delusion to the shores of God. And so, joy lies in continually thinking of God, not intermittently, not when circumstances permit, continually. The longing for Him should be the background frequency of the entire life, beneath the work, beneath the conversations, beneath the small urgencies and pleasures and difficulties of each day. There is a point, and people who have touched it know what is being described here, where the mind stops wandering away entirely, where not even the greatest affliction of body, mind, or soul can take the consciousness from the living presence of God, where what Krishna called remaining in the castle of God's presence becomes not a spiritual goal, but simply the normal condition of being alive. Is that not what you actually want? Underneath all the specific desires, beneath the particular things you have wanted and reached for and tried to hold on to, is that not the shape of what you are actually looking for? To live and think and feel God all the time, to remain in His presence, from which death cannot remove you and circumstance cannot take you, from which nothing can separate you that you do not yourself choose. When you are proof against all desires, not by suppressing them, but by finding in God what every desire was imperfectly trying to reach, you are enjoying the presence eternal. Everything else is subject to change. Everything else you see now will one day be different and then gone. That is not tragedy. It is simply the nature of what is not real, reminding you to look toward what is. Scrutinize your desires carefully. Sort through them honestly. Keep the ones that move you toward Him and release the ones that move you away. And then, above all, before all, preceding every other duty and every other urgency, seek Him first. His answer to that seeking is not conditional. It is not uncertain. It is not dependent on how worthy you are, or how long you have been trying, or how well your life has gone up to this point. He is already present. He has always been present. In every desire you have ever had, beneath the surface of what you thought you wanted, it was always Him you were reaching for. Now you know where to look.